Awesome. Think we're live. David, thanks so much for coming and spending some time with us on Worldviews.
My pleasure.
We are super excited to have you. I think you're one of the first like LDS guests that we have had on, and so we're it's a topic me and Devin are both interested in, and so we're really excited to dive in further with you.
No pressure on me, right?
Yeah, no pressure at all. Exactly, it's no pressure. I typically like to start with just tell us about your growing up years, like just some high level things, where you're from, where you grew up, and then that typically, if you don't mind leading that into your conversion into LDS, or if you grew up in it, or just kind of what your history is with the faith.
Sure. Yeah, and I apologize if it doesn't look like I'm looking right at the camera. It's because you're right above the camera, actually.
No
Um,
worries.
but yeah, I grew up as a Latter-day Saints. My parents are Latter-day Saints. My parents' are all Latter-day Saints. We go back quite a ways into the ancestry, but I grew up primarily in Oregon, in a little town in northeastern Oregon, just a bathroom stop on the side of the freeway. Um, and it was a great place to grow up. I mean, Latter-day Saints there, it was a minority religion, uh, which is kind of how it is in most places, at least outside of Utah.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I've always I've always believed it. Um, of course, I've also always had questions. I think that's probably a natural thing for people of most faiths. And I have questions now as well.
Hmm.
But the confidence that I have in what I do believe it weighs more than the questions that I have. And at some point, you grow up in a faith, and particularly with the Latter-day Saint faith, I mean, Pew Research did a study recently and found that we are the least liked religious group in the United States.
Really?
Yeah. So we're not a particularly popular faith. Unfortunately, I think we have a lot to offer, but
Yeah.
there's some negativity towards us, which is probably evident in some of the media,
Hmm.
particularly of late. But but I think because of that, I mean, you get some backlash from kids at school and whatnot, and then as you get older and you get on social media, particularly, you can't say anything pretty much about Latter Day Saints without getting backlash. So you hit a point where you're like, okay, I need to figure out if this is something that I really believe or not. Like, am I willing to put up with this, with the harassment for the rest of my life? Um, if I'm not confident in it.
Yeah.
And so I went through that phase, and I am confident in it. I can't prove it. I think that's one of those things when it comes to faith. Can't prove Jesus was resurrected, right? Like, we have the witness testimony, and we have to go off of that and decide whether or not they're reliable, and try to find God where we can, and build a relationship with Him. Um, so that's what I've been doing. I served a mission, 2-year mission in Mexico, Chihuahua, Mexico,
Mm.
and that was transformative in a lot of different ways. Really, just something that's deeply meaningful to me that I think about a lot. But then came home, went to BYU for 4 years, got married, have a couple of kids now, and get to create content for the Keystone YouTube channel or Instagram account, TikTok and Facebook, all the socials. Just talking about Latter-day Saint history, answering tough questions, talking about what we believe. I don't have a background in biblical studies or Hebrew or anything like that. I have a degree in communications. So I'm just, a regular guy trying to figure things out and reading as much as I can when it comes to some of these topics and questions. But yeah, that's me. And I'm curious. So you're in Kentucky, right?
Hmm. Yep.
Do you have any Latter-day Saint friends?
So I was actually thinking about this before the interview. I really don't. It's not intentional. There
Sure.
aren't that many LDS here. I do know of one church about 20 minutes away from me that I've driven by. Beautiful. You all call them temples, right?
Yeah. So a temple is different from a church building.
Okay.
So when we can talk about that later if you want,
Yeah,
but yeah, if you're talking about like a big white building with spires and stuff, that's probably a temple.
it was.
You probably have more subtle church buildings kind of scattered around, but maybe you just haven't seen them or noticed them
That's yeah,
before.
that's probably true. So no, I don't. I've worked with a few people in my career. Like when I first started my career, randomly I was kind of in like a training cohort about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and two of the people in my cohort had just got back from their mission.
Okay.
So I don't know if they like did college then did the mission, or maybe they did the mission then went to college and joined. I'm not sure, but I know they were telling me about it. Funny enough, though, I did recently have two people on mission come to my door. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, Elder Schwartz and Elder Jeff. Shout out to them. They were the nicest people. They came over twice. They came over once. We sat on the couch and chatted for a while, and then they texted me and came back like a few weeks later, and we had another conversation. So, yeah, it was interesting. It was funny. My wife came home from work one day, and they were just sitting on the couch, and she was like, "Who are you guys?" And I'm like, "This is Elder Schwartz and Elder Jeff. They're out canvassing the neighborhood." So we had some good conversations. But to answer your question, not a lot of people. No.
Sure. So have you had, um, I mean, I guess what is the main source of your knowledge about what Latter-day Saints believe?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this is actually something I definitely want to talk about because you were saying earlier how like Latter-day Saints is the most hated. Now, is that of any type of religion, or you mean like version of Christianity?
So specifically the least liked. It was interesting. The survey that Pew Research did was kind of nuanced. They asked like, if you feel positively towards a religion, if you feel negatively towards a religion,
Okay,
and if you're
gotcha.
neutral.
Hmm.
So when they asked people, how positively do you feel about the Latter Day Saint faith, that ratio was the smallest amongst all of the different faiths that they surveyed or religious
That's so
groups that they were
that's
asking
so
about.
interesting. I'm definitely going to look that study up after our meeting.
Yeah,
But
and to answer your question, it was a range of different Christian groups. There was evangelical, there was mainline Protestant. I think there
okay,
was historically Black Protestant, but I also think there was Judaism there, and a couple others. But yeah,
did it rank below Islam? Just out of curiosity.
you know, I don't
It's
remember.
okay. I don't want to. I didn't mean to drill you on the study. I
No,
don't.
no,
It's
you're fine.
not.
Um, there was a lot of information about Islam that was included in there. I don't remember if that specific religion was included on that question.
Gotcha. So I guess there's a couple things I wanted to ask you about, like what it was like to grow up, in the LDS Church. But I guess since we're like on this topic, one of the things I had that I wanted to talk about is obviously you mentioned media. So one thing that got really popular was the Netflix documentaries.
Hmm.
I'm assuming like have you heard of it's Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey?
Sure.
Okay, so that was crazy. Like so I watched it, but it so I looked into it because you asked like where do I get my perception of LDS from? I try to be fair. I think typically media is trying to not give you like maybe not the most accurate information, but cause a reaction, force you to look. So that's not my only source of LDS knowledge at all. But I did watch it, and it was interesting because it sounds like those were more based on like the fundamental LDS. Like it's like a totally different like sect basically.
Yeah.
So I'm not in any way saying that's my view into LDS because I have much more or much other views into it. But to answer your question, or to like kind of piggyback on what you were saying, I feel like that probably contributed very negatively to the perception of just total LDS people. And probably even unfairly, because I'm assuming, and you tell me otherwise, is there a lot of people that watch that and were like, that's not necessarily like obviously what it's like. And that's not fair that that's us on the world stage. And they're kind of talking about a very extreme group of us. So, what are your thoughts on
Yeah. So I didn't watch that series, mainly because the fundamentalist kind of sect of that they represent are in no way connected with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, so and that's a really big point of confusion is like they talk about, because they do believe in like the Book of Mormon and whatnot,
Right.
but they are not part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They broke off many, many decades ago. And so, like, I guarantee you that Latter-day Saints that might have been watching that same series probably saw some of those things and were like, yeah, this is shady. This is awful.
Yeah.
Let's get this Warren Jeffs guy in jail. I mean, he is in jail now, but yeah, like we have, we share Latter-day Saints historically practiced polygamy in, between, particularly in Utah, between 1852 and like the late 1800s. It was in decline by about 1860. It had reached its peak at about 1860 and was in decline after that. And then we talk about it's called the Manifesto that came out in I think 1890, which put an end to polygamy officially. It took a little while to peter out, but my understanding is that somewhere in there was a group of members that were like, no, we're going to keep this going, and they broke off, and that has become that sect today that was formerly led by Warren Jeffs. So Latter-day Saints today feel really no connection with that group at all, other than a shared belief in the Book of Mormon.
Gotcha. Makes sense. And that's kind of what I gathered. If anything, I felt like it was probably unfair, but it happens with all types of things, not just you all. Like, there's other Christian exposés on there aimed at evangelicals or, other people like that. But it's just sometimes wild that, like, that can be, because I'm assuming that was one of the reasons why it was so negatively viewed. I mean, because a lot of people don't have that much of a, like, window into LDS. So how could they feel so negative?
There's been a lot of content out about Latter-day Saints recently, and I'm not just talking, podcasts and YouTube channels. There's, Under the Banner of Heaven was a series that came out.
I saw that. I saw
a few years ago. Yeah. Sorry, that's my wife.
Oh, no worries.
Calling me. Let me
Do you
just
need
text
to take
her.
a pause?
Let me just text her real quick.
Yeah, no worries.
Anyway, so there was Under the Banner of Heaven a few years ago, which was pretty critical of the faith. There was the movie Heretic that came out a year or two ago that was pretty anti-religion in general, I thought. But it centers around two Latter-day Saint sister missionaries, female missionaries.
I saw that.
There was, of course, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, 2 seasons of that on Hulu, and a couple other things. There was American Primeval on Netflix, where the big bad guy is Brigham Young, and they just make him look as awful as possible. Yeah. So there have been, if people are looking for, something that could be a factor contributing towards negative feelings or negative impressions about Latter-day Saints, there's plenty out there. We've just, ever since, the church began, church was established in 1830 by Joseph Smith, we've been pretty heavily persecuted. Forced from one place to another, from, Missouri to Nauvoo to Utah. And so, there's been a lot of negative sentiment towards Latter-day Saints for almost 200 years now. Yeah. And so I don't find it particularly surprising that people still have that impression. But I feel like oftentimes the problem is that people don't have Latter-day Saint friends to talk to about it. And I think that that's one of the good things about your podcast is that, hey, we've got questions about Latter-day Saints. Let's bring one on and talk with one instead of, talking about them without them being represented per se. And I think that most people who, have faithful, believing Latter-day Saint friends who are kind of practicing what we preach, I think that those people are going to have a positive impression of the church because they have that more intimate contact with the faith, as opposed to, just hearing about what people say online or in these streaming platforms about our faith. But that wasn't very eloquent. Needless to say, I think we could use some more bridge building.
Totally. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. I mean, that's always been my impression too, is like anyone in the LDS church that I have interacted with, I'm always very surprised at how nice they are, how service oriented, even how smart. For some reason, a lot of people in the LDS church are really smart. I feel like a lot of people I've met, I'm like, wow, you're really smart, or you know a lot. You do your research, you're well studied. The families are always beautiful. Like the LDS church, and I'm going to ask you this, but feels like puts a lot of emphasis on the family unit and like keeping that cohesive. And I've noticed that with a lot of like LDS people, or members that I've met. So yeah, I do feel like there's a massive disconnect for sure. What heretic is going to show, and then what is actual reality.
Yeah, and while we're talking about this, let's see. Can you still see me?
Yeah.
Okay. I pulled up a different screen here because I actually did a video recently on just like statistics about Latter-day Saints. And you're talking about family, and I'm just going to throw some statistics at you because I thought it was really interesting. So, for example, and this is more research from Pew Research Center. So, in a survey, they asked Latter-day Saints and people of other faiths and general Americans to rank how important certain life goals were to them. So, for example, they said, being a good parent, how important is this to you? And the highest rating you could give it was that it was one of the most important things in life. Mm-hmm. So only 50% of Americans in general said that being a good parent was one of the most important things in life. Among Latter-day Saints, that number jumps to 81%. So significantly higher. And then they also, another category was how important is having a successful marriage in your life. Only 35% of the general public in the United States considered it one of the most important things in life to have a successful marriage. For Latter-day Saints, it was 73%. And I don't say that. I'm not bringing those up to, pat ourselves on the back or brag because, oh, look at our wonderful values, but just to kind of put some data behind what you're saying about families. It is a big emphasis for us that, being a good parent, having a successful marriage, those are, some of our core values. Yeah. Along with Jesus, of course.
That's good. Okay. That's good. That's in there too.
Can't forget Jesus.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting. I mean, I've thought a lot about this because there's a lot of conversation around birth rate decline. Have you kind of seen some stuff about that? Like it's a lot of people are talking about it, secular and non-secular, and just wondering like, hey, why is no one wanting to have babies? Well, if you look deeply into it, it's like the values of like the family unit have kind of just crumbled in society. Like you said, and the data proves it, it's not as desirable. For a lot of different reasons, which we could obviously go into. But it's interesting because I feel like I think that data is probably similarly true for other forms of Christianity. I think a lot of different forms of Christianity put the value on the family and would say like, hey, one beautiful thing about life is getting married and having children and raising kids, and that's not a burden. That's a blessing.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because I was literally talking to actually my mom about this a few days ago. So it's an interesting topic. But I wanted to ask you about mission. So you said you went on mission. So where did you say? You said Chihuahua, Mexico?
Yeah, it's a real place.
Okay, I said that and I was like, did you mean something else? But no, you said Chihuahua.
Yeah, I didn't know it was a real place either when I opened up my mission call.
So
But
can
yeah.
you just tell me tell me a little bit more about mission? I mean, like I said, I interacted with a couple people that came to LaGrange. So I live in a little town outside of Louisville called LaGrange, and apparently they send missions here, which is wild. But I'd love to hear just like how it is, how you figure out where you're going, and then what it's like being there, and what's kind of the intent behind it.
Yeah, I mean the intent, it's the same intent as what Christ was asking his disciples to do before he died, right? Go and take the gospel to all the world. And we're trying missionaries, generally speaking, right? Because like these are human beings, and some might get in your face and be argumentative, and some, hopefully, most are not going to do that. We're not supposed to do that. Missionaries aren't supposed to do that, but we're trying to add on to the truth that people already have, right? And that's not to say that we believe we have a monopoly on truth, or that we have
Mm-hmm.
all the truth there is, right?
Yeah.
But we want to take where people are at with Christ and help them grow that relationship, and of course teach them more about the church, about our faith. But the process. So for me, I began my mission in 2010. So you fill out some paperwork. You have to have some kind of medical checkups to make sure that that you'll be safe if you get sent halfway around the world. For example, my brother has had or has some kind of minor heart condition, and so he ended up getting sent to actually Provo, Utah. We even send
Okay.
missionaries to the heart of Mormondom, so to speak, in
Yeah.
Utah. But part of that may have been because health factors contributed to kind of the idea that he needed to be a little closer to home, or closer to where he could get help if he needed it. But yeah, so you fill out paperwork, you do the health tests and stuff, just like a physical, and make sure you're up to date on your shots and stuff. And then you turn all that paperwork into the church, and then senior leaders in the church will look at all that information that they have, and they will decide on a call for you, a place of service. The idea is that is inspired, that they are inspired to send you where God needs you to be. And that's also not to say that there's only one right answer to that question. I think for many people, you could have 50 different options, and all of them can be inspired. But anyway, so then it takes a few months for all of that paperwork and that process to go through, and then you get, for me, it was in the mail. You get an envelope in the mail. Now it's through email, where it says you've been called to serve in this mission in this part of the world. You'll be speaking this language. Report to the MTC on this date. The MTC is the Missionary Training Center. There's
Okay.
one in Provo. The main one is in Provo, just right next to BYU, but there are various other smaller MTCs around the world. There's one in Mexico City, etc. And so I mean, your parents drop you off I mean, that's what happened for me. My parents dropped me off at the MTC in Provo, and see you in 2 years. So, but now there are more options now than there used to be. I mean, you can be so young men will serve for 2 years, up to 2 years. Young women will serve up to 18 months, so a year and a half. You could also do a service mission, which I think there are a variety of different options there, and it's more local, so you're not traveling around the world per se for it. And those are more focused on more service project oriented, as opposed to
Okay.
proselytizing and knocking on people's doors. But for me, it was proselytizing. So I mean, I'd taken some Spanish in high school, tried to brush up on it at the MTC before they sent me. I was at the MTC for about 3 weeks. Most missionaries that are going to be speaking a foreign language are usually there for like 12 weeks. But since I had a little bit more experience with Spanish, I was only there for a few weeks, and then they sent me off to Mexico, and you have your missionary companion there. You're assigned. There's a mission president. So I guess each mission is a geographic area. At the time for my mission, it was the whole state of Chihuahua, which is a state in Mexico. They've since split that mission, I think. But then over each mission, there is a mission president and his wife, and they kind of preside over the missionaries in that area, and they assign the companionships, and those companionships have a more specific geographic area where they serve, and you're knocking doors, you're visiting members of the church, less active members of the church, non-members of the church is obviously the main focus. But yeah, just trying to find people that are interested in learning more, and it's hard. I mean, these are, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. They're not theologians. Mm-hmm. They are just passionate about what they believe, and yeah, it's you're away from your family. You can communicate with your family, of course, but you don't physically see your family. You're not with them for a long time, and it's a sacrifice. But it was. I mean, it was not an easy time, but it was one of the most rewarding times of my life.
Yeah, no, I bet it is. That's wow, that's cool. I was impressed. I have a limited interaction with missionaries. Like I said, they came to my house, but I was impressed with. They were very good at like asking the right probing questions, to get to the kind of next phase in the conversation. I was impressed by that. Like I said, they're young. Yeah. They looked like 18 or 19 too. So, yeah, it was impressive. But you kind of open the door and they're like, "Hey, would you like to learn more about Jesus Christ?" It's like, "Oh, hello,"
We're just right. They'll lay it all out there for you.
Yeah.
So do you have a third appointment scheduled with them?
No, this was last year sometime. We ended up meeting twice, and I forget why we never met again, to be honest. It might have been because I didn't respond. I can't remember.
You ghosted them?
I may have. I don't know. I need to look back. This was last year sometime. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about, I'm not clear on exactly like how do like people in the LDS community view other Christians, and like what is that kind of like? Like do LDS members view other Christians as kind of people to be saved and brought into the LDS Church? Do you view it all as kind of one family? Like what's the view on that?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, because I just did a video that applies to this yesterday on Instagram. But so, this is another Pew Research survey. It's, I think, actually just a continuation of the same one that I've been talking about. But Pew Research wanted to know what other religions thought about other religions, right? So what do evangelicals think about Jews? What do, Catholics think about Latter-day Saints? And so there's a chart that kind of lays all that out, and it's really interesting because they have it laid out. So if it's a negative number, that means that, so the lower the score goes, the more negative the opinion that people have about that group. The higher the score goes, the higher the opinion. So for Latter-day Saints, every other religion or non-religion, because they included atheists and agnostics in there as well, everyone had a negative view of Mormonism, of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, except for the Catholic faith. They had a positive 2, and this is on like a scale to like 100 or something. I don't know. So just barely inching over the negatives. But it was interesting because despite the negativity received, when Latter-day Saints were asked what they thought about all of these different faiths, they were all positive. And not only positive, but if you are evangelical or mainline Protestant or Catholic or Jewish or Muslim, Latter-day Saints are actually your biggest fans, which I find really interesting. And I could pull the chart up for you if you wanted to see it. But yeah, so we think pretty highly, actually, of people of other faiths, at least relatively speaking, within this data set that Pew Research put together. We do believe we have the restored gospel of Jesus Christ, and that it is the quote unquote true church. But as I said before, we don't believe we have a monopoly on truth, and that there are plenty of awesome things that other people have to offer. We believe that people of other faiths can have sincere and beautiful relationships with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
We have some theological differences, but really, I mean, anything that brings you closer to Christ, we are all here for. As far as heaven goes, per se, I don't know how familiar you are with Latter-day Saint doctrine on the afterlife. Have you heard anything about what we believe there? Smidgen?
I'm hesitant to say yes because I know a little, but I don't even want to try to explain. So I'm gonna let you explain.
Yeah. So essentially, we don't believe in just a dichotomous you go to heaven or hell.
Yeah.
We think it's a little more nuanced than that.
Mm-hmm.
And we believe that there are multiple, for lack of a better word, kingdoms or degrees or levels of heaven.
Yeah.
It's kind of a spectrum of glory, instead of just like all or nothing. And so there are different levels, but we believe that these are all kingdoms of glory and that people can find happiness there. So to boil it down, we believe that there's going to be a whole lot of people in heaven in some form, and very, very few people in, kind of an eternal hell type thing.
Mm-hmm.
We do believe that people will have to pay for their sins if they do not repent of them, right? But we don't necessarily believe that, for example, I was talking with a Christian, and I know that not all Christian is a broad group, right? And one that I would include Latter-day Saints in. I think that we are Christian, though many others would disagree with that. Many other people from other Christian groups would disagree with that. But I was talking with a Christian, and I said, what percentage of humanity do you think is going to end up in an eternal hell for forever?
Yeah.
And he said 80%. And I was just like, holy cow, that's a lot. That doesn't necessarily sound like a plan of salvation to me. That sounds more like a plan of damnation. And again, I know that not all, Christians are going to agree with that estimate, but in contrast to that, Latter-day Saints see it very differently, and we believe that we're going to be seeing people of all different faiths in heaven in some way. It's more nuanced than that, but that's kind of the nutshell version.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. No, that's interesting. I know. Have you ever heard of Bishop Barron? He's a Catholic apologist, priest apologist. Okay, no worries. Well, he was asked this recently by Ben Shapiro. You've probably heard of Ben Shapiro, maybe. Yeah. And he kind of gave a similar answer, which was interesting. He basically said that the path through Jesus Christ is like the privileged route and most preferred route, but he wouldn't be surprised if in heaven there was people of other religions who also lived great lives, which was interesting. I've never really, a lot of people don't want to say that, it's definitely not popular to say. So it was interesting, but I think there's other Christians that kind of believe a similar thing. I mean, the Bible does say you're going to be rewarded according to your works, based on the works you did. So, I mean, there's some, theology straight from the Bible that even evangelical Christians would have a hard time denying, because it's like, how are you gonna handle that verse if it's all the same, if it's so black and white? It's like you die and you're either up or down. It's like no in between. So that's interesting.
Yeah. In my house are many mansions, right? I think that we'll and I think there's probably even more nuance there than what Latter-day Saints believe. I mean, we kind of categorize it into 3 kingdoms of glory. There's probably even, I don't know, there could be even more than that. And there's a lot we don't yet know about what that's going to look like. But I don't know. I'm of the opinion that if God, here's the thing, having kids, if I punish if I need to punish my child, there's a purpose for it, right? Like there's something that I'm trying to teach them. Mm-hmm. And we might have to go through it a few times. Like he might have to, be punished over and over again until he kind of picks up on the message here. So for me personally, I struggle with the idea that like you get sent to hell and like there's no message, like there's no like, hey, you're being punished so you learn this so that you can do better in the future. But rather it's just like, sorry, you're out of chances. Mercy ends here. And now you're stuck here suffering forever. And, and I agree that there are some people who do just absolutely horrible, heinous things, in their lives that should, face justice for that. But the thought that, by default we're all sinners and we're all hellbound automatically. So if you murder someone, or if you were mean and if you murder someone versus you stole, something from the Dollar Tree store when you were 13 years old, like to believe that both of those things, they're both sins, right? But to believe that they both condemn you for eternity, like if you don't repent and come to Jesus over it, that doesn't necessarily sit well with me. And so I like belonging to a faith where there's a lot more nuance than that. And again, that's not to say that there isn't nuance in other kind of forms of Christianity, but sometimes it feels a little more definitive in the Latter-day Saint faith. Like this is established doctrine versus maybe in some other Christian groups where it's more of like we don't know, like maybe there's room in God's mercy for for non-baptized people or for people who've never heard of Jesus to be saved. Anyway, I'm rambling, but it's a doctrine I'm passionate about in the Latter-day Saint faith.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. No, that's interesting. I'm sure we could probably talk about heaven for a long time. And it's very interesting. I'll do some more research on like the exact LDS belief on heaven, but it sounds interesting to me. I mean, I try to take a more nuanced approach kind of anyway, so I'll have to see what the LDS view is. I know we don't have like a ton of time per se left. I wanted to definitely talk about like the Book of Mormon, the founding of LDS, Joseph Smith. Can you just kind of give us like the high level of it? And then I have a couple just questions, I guess, in general. But I'd love to start with just kind of tell us like when it came about and, when the founding was and that type of thing. A little bit about Joseph Smith.
Sure, yeah. So let's start in 1820. About 1820, Joseph Smith is a young teenager, and he's wondering which church to join. There's a lot of confusion and a lot of competition in the area where he is in upstate New York. He prays about it, and in response to his prayer, he has a vision, and he sees God the Father and Jesus Christ, and they say, you know what, just don't join any of them for now. We've got something coming. Just be patient. And he had some other questions. He was worried about the state of his soul and the sins that he'd committed, and he's forgiven for his sins. And he has this experience, and then kind of nothing happens for a little while. But eventually he is visited by an angel. His name is Moroni, who is a character in the Book of Mormon, actually. Kind of makes his post-credit scene appearance as an angel. But he comes to Joseph Smith and he says, look, there's this ancient record of people from the ancient Americas. It's buried in what we call the Hill Cumorah, which is a few miles away from where Joseph was living. And you are commissioned essentially to recover this book and to have it translated, and because people need to hear about, the history of this people. Mm-hmm. So he recovers it. At first, he doesn't think that he's supposed to be the translator of it. He tries to get it translated by, Charles Anton or some other more knowledgeable people, but they either can't do it or refuse to do it. And Joseph says, "Okay, well, I guess I'm supposed to do this." He translates it through the gift and power of God is kind of the most common expression for how it was translated, because we really don't know how it was translated, right? I mean, we talk about how he used a revelatory tool called a seer stone, maybe somewhat comparable to like the Urim and Thummim of the Old Testament. And miraculously, he was able to read the translation of this ancient book off of this stone, and his scribe would write it down, and it was a very quick translation. It was translated in just a couple of months. 530 plus pages. He would just sit down day after day, hour after hour, and just, be reading sentence after sentence, and the scribe would write it down, and now it's the Book of Mormon. So that's the 10,000 foot view.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, it's I do have a copy from Elder Schwartz and Elder Jeff that they dropped off. So
they better have given you a copy.
yeah, they did. That was one of the first things they dropped off, and it's interesting. There's some really interesting stuff in it. It's one thing I guess I was curious about is, like, from the LDS perspective, why did we need more instructions so, like, far removed from when Jesus was alive? Not that it, like, let me just ask it that way.
Sure. I mean, so if I'm understanding correctly, why did the Book of Mormon come forth in 1830 versus in year 30 type of thing? Or
yeah, exactly. Like, that's like one common criticism I've heard, like, people say before, is that, like, it came so much after the fact. Like, why did we need a revision in the first place, type of thing? Like, and why was it so far removed from when Jesus actually was, like you said, 2,000 years later, basically?
Sure. I mean, that's a good question. I don't know that I've encountered that one particularly frequently, but the Book of Mormon, the story of the Book of Mormon covers a period of time from about 600 BC to about 400 AD. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of time that it covers in there. I mean, the Bible, as we know it today, wasn't necessarily compiled and decided upon until a few hundred years after Christ. There were some of these texts floating around, right? So part of me wonders if people from that time also wondered, like, why is this only coming about hundreds of years after Jesus Christ was here? But, I think that the Book of Mormon specifically is written for people that come after the people written about in the Book of Mormon. So they say over and over again, this is a record for people that come later, so that they might know that we knew about Jesus Christ in this part of the world. And I would say that even it being revealed in 1830, or technically 1827, when Joseph has his vision of Moroni and whatnot, or is visited by Moroni, published in 1830, it almost didn't make it through even in 1830 because of persecution, and people were trying to take the plates. And so I wonder personally if it would have survived had it come forth earlier. By 1830, we'd gotten to a point where the United States was a place of religious liberty, which was relatively novel at the time.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if they needed that time to get to a point in the history of the world where religious liberty could actually exist, versus, maybe an attempt to bring this forth and it just being stamped out. But that's an interesting question. I haven't thought about it much. Yeah, that'd probably be my response to that. I think there's also kind of a difference between the New World and the Old World. The history of the Old World goes back in a direct line, back to Christ and beyond, even back before Christ for centuries. The New World history is a lot more murky, I think. You have the United States established in 1776 or whenever. Hope I got that right. I'm not a U.S. historian. And then you've got the history of the Native Americans, right? And you know, we don't know exactly where the Book of Mormon took place, if it was in North America or Central America or a combination of North, Central, and South America. But yeah, I think there are probably a lot of factors feeding into that. But yeah, that's one I'll have to think about a little more.
No, that's a good answer. That's a good answer. Yeah, okay. Makes sense. Well, we're about near the end of what I said, 45 minutes. We typically ask a couple fun questions at the end. We kind of ask them to every guest. They're a little bit off the cusp, nothing too crazy, but we'll see what you think about them. So the first one is, what are your beliefs in aliens?
Oh, man. Whew.
And, you know, don't feel like some people just say, I don't believe in them, and it's okay. Like, you don't have to have a well thought out theological opinion. If you don't, it's okay.
No, I mean, technically, yeah. I would say I believe in aliens. We believe that God has a physical body of flesh and bone, glorified, perfected flesh and bone, right? Like, you can't hurt him, or, you know, his body is not going to be corrupted or die. So essentially, we believe he has a body similar to the resurrected body of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. But we also believe that he exists within space and time. I mean, time is a tricky one, but like, he has a physical body. We believe he takes up space. So he is physically somewhere. So I guess in a way you could argue that God is an alien to Earth. In a similar way, you could say that human beings could be alien to Earth if we originated somewhere else with God and he put us on Earth. Mm-hmm. You could say that we're alien, but I mean, when I say he's alien, I don't mean that he's got 15 eyeballs and 17 legs. We believe that God looks like us, that he looks like a human, that he looks like a man. Obviously a glorified version of mortal man. But yeah, I guess technically, yeah. As far as like the different species of aliens go, I don't know that we have a super solid doctrine on that personally. Yeah, I mean, I believe God made all sorts of worlds and planets, and I wouldn't at all be surprised if there were others that had intelligent life on them. What do you think? That's a good question.
I'm kind of similar to you. I think it's definitely possible. I think it could fit within the Christian worldview. I wouldn't be that surprised. I am kind of one of these people, though, that's like, how have we never seen one? Like, that's a theory called something. I forget what it's called, but it's like a scientific theory of like, why? Well, if they're real, why have we never seen one? And then there's some like answers to why people like theorize that is. But I don't know. I don't know if I'd be that surprised either way. Like, I think it scares some people that we might be the most important thing like in the universe. Like, I think some people take comfort in the fact that like, oh, we're just one of a million things similar to us. Like, our lives are meaningless. We can do whatever. But it's like, maybe we really are the center of all of creation and there's nothing else out there. So I don't know. I go both ways with it. I think people like to use it as a cop-out to say, like, whatever is, I mean, if there's aliens and we're human, we can do whatever. Like, morals probably aren't even real because they probably have their own morals and we have ours. Like, I don't know. There's a lot there, but
a lot to unpack.
Yeah, there's a lot of situations, but it's just getting so popular in the past few years. It's interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
And then the only other question would be, what is one question you want to ask God when you get to heaven?
Oh, yeah, just one more. Just the last tiny question. Sheesh.
And you're very well thought out. Some people are more like, what was my dog thinking? Or something, you know?
Yeah. Man. The kind of the first thing that comes to mind is, so what's next?
Okay. Yeah.
Like, what happens now? I mean, obviously, you're worried about the state of your soul, right? And you want to make sure you're forgiven for your sins, and that you're right with God, right? Like that's like I think that'll be the first thing that everybody's worried about when they see God again.
Yeah.
But just past that, like normally we stop. And speaking generally of like Christendom, like we kind of stop the conversation once you get through the pearly gates, right? Like, we made it to heaven, destination reached. And my question would be, now what?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
That's a good question.
what am I doing for eternity here? Like, is this going to be like a situation where we're just, singing hymns for forever? Or like, is there going to be learning? Is there going to be growing? I mean, as Latter-day Saints, we believe there will be kind of eternal progression, but I'd love to know kind of what that looks like, what that process will be.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I could not agree more. You ever heard of John Mark Comer?
No.
No, okay. He wrote a book called, it's actually in a couple of his books, but Garden City is what it's called, and it's kind of about that idea that like heaven is probably going to be some sort of a continuation of what you did here on earth. Now, that's just one person's theory. Other people think that too, but it's kind of what you're saying. It's not so like we all get in there, it's all equal. We just sing praise and worship songs all day. It's more of like, were you an artist on earth? Well, then you probably will be creating beautiful things in heaven. Or, were you a scholar? You'll probably be researching things, although we'll have all knowledge. I don't know how that one's going to work out, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And that would align quite well with what Latter-day Saints believe. But yeah, it'll be an interesting... We'll have to reconnect up there and kind of... we'll film another podcast episode if that's still what you're doing. And we'll do a follow-up to this episode.
Sounds good. Well, David, thanks for coming on and hanging out with us on the podcast. This was a lot of fun.
My pleasure. And to anyone watching, feel free to reach out. If you have questions, if you don't have any Latter-day Saint friends, shoot me a message, and you got one now.
And do you want to plug your socials?
Sure, yeah. Just look up Keystone LDS. LDS it stands for Latter-day Saint. Look up Keystone LDS on YouTube or on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, and we'll show up. And see you guys there.
Awesome.